Alright everyone, this is the pre-lab video for the NaOH CuCl2 Solutions Lab. The purpose of this lab is to determine how much precipitate or solid product is produced in the reaction between NaOH and CuCl2. There are two primary lab safety rules associated with this lab. The first is to exercise caution when working with glassware. There should be absolutely no horseplay. You're going to be working with various types of glassware in the lab and make sure that you don't break any of them. The second is that no liquids should be poured down the drain. All of your liquid waste, all your chemical waste in general, should be dumped in the waste container provided for you by your instructor. You're going to need to pick up 6 pieces of equipment, and your instructor should have them in one place somewhere in the classroom. The 6 pieces of equipment that you need are a 500 milliliter flask, a 400 milliliter beaker, a 250 milliliter volumetric flask, a mini funnel, a squirt bottle, and a big funnel. Make sure you gather these 6 things and take them to your lab station before you start the lab. You will be using these 6 items in order to create 250 milliliters of a 0.1 molarity NaOH solution. Use the skills that you learned in class to write the procedures necessary in order to make the solution. After making your NaOH solution using the procedures that you wrote, you will be combining it with a CuCl2 solution that you will obtain from your instructor. Complete number 6 and number 7 on your pre-lab with your lab partners. These are the instructions that you will follow in the lab in order to produce your NaOH solution. Let's talk about how you're going to weigh out the NaOH in order to create your solution. There are 4 important things that you need to keep in mind. The first is make sure you open the scale before you use it. You're going to be getting your NaOH on this weigh boat. So what you're going to do is you're going to place it on the scale, and the first thing you want to do is first just wait for it to stop moving. And then after that, you're going to press 0 right here in order to set it to 0. After you 0 your scale, you're ready to transfer the sodium hydroxide from the container into the weigh boat. You're going to be using a scooper in order to transfer the sodium hydroxide onto the weigh boat, but there's another important thing that you need to keep in mind. The second important thing when using a scale is every time you open the container in order to take the compounds out, make sure that you close the container again after each use. Do not leave the container open at the chemical station, even if there's a group waiting behind you. You must close and seal the sodium hydroxide container after every single use. Alright, so let's say that you transferred the sodium hydroxide from the container onto your weigh boat using your scooper. But let's just say hypothetically that you took out too much sodium hydroxide. Say that you were trying to get about 8 grams, but you ended up getting 8.1817 grams. Okay, so this is too much now. Now, you cannot remove the sodium hydroxide from your weigh boat and put it back into container. This will contaminate all the stuff in the original container, so you cannot dispose of what you've already taken out and put it back into the container. That's the third rule that you need to keep in mind. You cannot return chemicals into the original container. If you ended up taking out too much sodium hydroxide, what you're going to do is you're going to use a scooper to remove the excess chemical, and you're going to throw it into the provided waste container. Again, you cannot put chemicals that you've already taken out and put it back into the original container. Okay. All right, and as long as you get a number very close to the amount of solute that you wanted to get out, then you're okay. Let's say that I wanted 8 and I got 7.98. That's close enough. All right, now the fourth thing that you should keep in mind while you're weighing out your NaOH is to clean up after yourself. If you spill any NaOH at the scale station, make sure that you pick it up with a paper towel and you throw it away into the waste container. Alright, so to review the 4 important things to keep in mind while using the scales to weigh out your NaOH. First, 0 out the weigh boat before adding NaOH to the scale. Second, close the NaOH container after each use to prevent contamination. Third, if you take out too much NaOH, never return it to the original container. Make sure you throw it away into the waste container. And fourth, make sure you clean up after yourself. Make sure there's no chemicals left on the scale station or on the scale. Also important to note that if you fail to keep any of these 4 things while you're weighing out your NaOH, you and your group will automatically get a 0 on the lab, and you'll not be able to participate in future lab activities. This is because the scales are very delicate, and if you contaminate the entire NaOH container, it's not fair for the students that are going after you who will be working with contaminated chemicals. And to be honest, it's just common sense and lab safety to clean up the lab station after you use it. Make sure you clean up the scale stations if you spill anything, and make sure that you don't contaminate the other chemicals for the other students. All right, so once you've weighed out the amount of NaOH that you calculate that you should get, you're going to be transferring it into the volumetric flask in order to create your NaOH solution. Now, in order to transfer it well, you're gonna need 3 pieces of equipment. First is you're gonna need your 400 ml beaker, you're gonna need your mini funnel, and you're gonna want your squirt bottle filled with water. All right, so the way that you're gonna transfer it into the volumetric flask is by transferring the NaOH into the beaker. Okay, so you're just gonna get the beaker, and you're just gonna tap the weigh boat in order to make sure that all the pieces of the NaOH get into the beaker. Now, if you guys notice, some of the pieces of the NaOH might stick onto the weigh boat. So to make sure that all of it gets into the beaker, we're gonna spray the weigh boat a little bit with some water, and then we're gonna use that water to transfer any remaining NaOH into the beaker. And you should look, there's gonna be some water in there, but all of the NaOH should be transferred into the beaker now. All right, next what you're gonna do is you're going to get your squirt bottle and you're gonna add some water into your beaker in order to initially dissolve the NaOH in order to make it easier to transfer into the volumetric flask. So you're gonna add just a little bit of water. You don't want a lot, just a little bit. Even underneath that first line is okay. And then you're gonna swirl it around and you're gonna notice that the NaOH is starting to dissolve. Now, as this is happening, if you touch your beaker, you're gonna notice it gets a little bit warm. It's because energy is being released as the NaOH is dissolving inside the water. That's perfectly normal. Again, you don't want to use very much water. You're gonna swirl it around, try to dissolve as much sodium hydroxide you can inside the water. And then when it seems like it's not dissolving anymore, you're gonna use your squirt bottle and you're just gonna add a little bit more. Okay, again, you should not be adding too much water. It should be very little. If you look at the markings, you're gonna notice that I'm not even at the 50 mark, or sorry, excuse me, the 25 mark yet. Okay, you're gonna be using very little water in order to dissolve as much NaOH as you can. All right, after you do that, you're going to get your volumetric flask and you're gonna place your mini funnel on top of the volumetric flask like that. And afterwards, you're going to get the dissolved NaOH and you're gonna pour it into the volumetric flask using your mini funnel. Pour slowly because the funnel can't overflow if you pour it too quickly. And you're gonna transfer as much of the NaOH into the volumetric flask as possible. After that, you're gonna give your beaker a quick rinse. Again, don't use too much water, just to make sure that as much NaOH is transferred from the beaker into the volumetric flask. Okay. I would recommend doing this maybe 2 or 3 times just to make sure that you get all of the NaOH from the beaker into the volumetric flask. All right, so once you've transferred all of the NaOH from the beaker into the volumetric flask, you can leave the beaker and the weigh boat on the side. You're gonna be washing these later. What you're gonna do is you're gonna use your squirt bottle and you're gonna fill up the volumetric flask very slowly until it reaches the line. So it's gonna be a kind of a slow process, but take your time with it. You're gonna add water to the volumetric flask until the water level gets to that marking right there. Once you hit that marking, that's when you know that it is 250 milliliters. So again, use your squirt bottle and then fill up the volumetric flask with water until it reaches that line. All right, so once you've filled up your volumetric flask to the line, you're now ready to stir it. Now, instead of stirring it manually, what we're gonna use is something called a stir rod and a stir plate. So you're gonna go to the stirring station that your instructor should have prepared for you, and you're going to obtain a magnetic stir bar. What you're gonna do is you're gonna drop the stir bar into your volumetric flask, and you're gonna place the volumetric flask on top of your a stir plate, and then you're gonna turn it on, and you should see that the stir bar is spinning, and that is how you are going to stir your solution automatically. All right, so you're gonna use the stir bar to stir your solution for 3 minutes, and after 3 minutes, you can turn the stir plate off, and then you're going to ask your instructor to remove the stir bar for you. All right, once you've removed the stir bar from your volumetric flask, you're going to take your 400 milliliter beaker to your instructor and ask your instructor to fill it up with CuCl2 solution. Now write this down somewhere on your pre-lab, but your CuCl2 solution is going to be your excess. This is the compound you're going to have so much of that you don't need to worry about it. Alright, so your instructor should give you 100 milliliters of CuCl2 solution, and it should look like this right here. It's going to be blue. And what you're going to do is you're going to take both solutions back to your lab station, and what you're going to do is you're going to take the NaOH solution that you created and you're going to pour it into the beaker that contains the CuCl2 solution. Okay, so it should fill it up most of the way, but it should not overflow. And you'll notice that the color of the CuCl2 solution got a bit darker. Alright, now you're going to take the combined solution back to the stir bar station, and you're going to drop a stir bar in there, and then you're going to stir this combined solution now. Okay, so what we're doing is we're making sure that the NaOH solution and the CuCl2 solution are reacting and they fully get a chance in order for them to mix and react together. And you're going to be stirring it now for 3 minutes. Alright, so once you've stirred your mixed solution for 3 minutes, you're going to go see your instructor and you're going to obtain a coffee filter from your instructor. After that, you're going to take the mixed solution and the coffee filter back to your lab station for the next part of the lab. Alright, so once you finish stirring your mixed solution, you're going to obtain a coffee filter from your instructor and you're going to take him back to your lab station. And the only materials that you have not used at your lab station so far are going to be your 500 milliliter Erlenmeyer flask and your big funnel. And so you're going to be using these pieces of equipment in order to create something called a 3F system. Now the 3F system, the purpose of it is to separate the precipitate, the solid product that you made, from the rest of the solution. And so what you're going to do is you're going to create the 3F system, and make sure you draw this on your pre-lab paper. It's called the 3F system because it's made out of 3 pieces of equipment that start with the letter F. At the bottom is going to be your flask. On top of that is going to be your big funnel. And then on top of that is your filter paper. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using this in order to separate the solid product that you made by combining the 2 solutions through the 3F system. So very simple. What you're going to do is you're going to get your 3F system and you're going to get your mixed solution and you're going to very slowly pour the mixed solution into the 3F system. Now you want to go very slow because as you guys notice, the funnel will move around a little bit as the liquid settles and the filter paper moves around a little as well. And you don't want any of the mixed solution to pour directly into the flask. And so you want to go very, very slowly, pouring small amounts at a time, being careful it doesn't overflow and the filter paper doesn't rip from your mixed solution into your flask. Alright, so just to reiterate, you're going to be pouring the mixed solution into the 3F system, and again, you want to go very slowly to make sure it doesn't overflow and that it doesn't tear the filter paper because you're going to lose product then. And so what you want to do is you want to very slowly pour to filter the mixed solution, the precipitate, the solid product that you made using the 3F system. This is going to take a really long time, and even once you have all of the mixed solution in here, it's going to take a lot longer for the liquid to fall through the filter paper. Alright, so what should you do as the 3F system is doing its thing, filtering the precipitate from the rest of the solution? Well, there's a couple things that you should be doing. The first thing that you should be doing is you're going to notice you have a bunch of different glassware and equipment that you are done with now. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be washing them in the sinks, and you're going to be returning them where you first obtained them. That's the first thing you're going to do. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to wash your equipment and return them where you got it. The second thing is once all of the mixed solution has been placed into the 3F system and is filtering, you should clean up your lab station. You're going to notice naturally as you guys do your lab, there's going to be wet spots, there's going to be little spills. You want to make sure that your lab station is completely clean, there's no wet spots or any liquids anywhere. So you're going to clean up your lab station. second thing you should do. And once you're done with all of that, you're going to work on your post-lab calculations. So you're going to go see your instructor now and obtain the post-lab calculations paper, and you're going to be working on your post-lab calculations as you wait for this system to filter. Now, I do want to remind you guys that this does take a long period of time to filter out. This might take more than the class period that you have. And so a lot of you guys will actually be filtering overnight, and you won't be able to see your completely filtered solution until the next time that you come to class. That's totally okay. If you need to, if your solution does not completely filter during the class period, what you're gonna do is you're gonna carefully take your 3F system and you're gonna take it to your instructor. Once you go to your instructor, the instructor will give you a label where you can write your name and your class period of your group in order to label your 3F system. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna set it to the side and let it filter overnight. All right, so just a reminder, while the system is still filtering, you should be washing all your glassware and returning them where you got it. You're gonna be cleaning up your lab station to make sure there's no spills or wet spots. You're gonna be working on your post-lab calculations, and if your solution does not completely filter during the class period, you're gonna take it to your instructor, get a label, and let it filter overnight. All right, so this should be the end point of day 1 of the lab. You should have poured all of your mixed solution into the 3F system, and it should be filtering like this. Okay, so what you're gonna do is make sure that if it's still filtering while when the end of class comes, you're going to take it to your instructor, label it, and you're gonna set it aside and let it filter overnight. Alrighty guys, so welcome to day 2 of the lab. And for day 2 of the lab, you're going to first obtain your filtered solution. And you should see that at the bottom you have all your solvent, and all the precipitate has been filtered out, and it should be in your filter paper. Now, you're going to observe that it's still a little bit wet, and so what we're going to be doing in this final step is we're going to be drying the precipitate out so that we can get the mass of just the precipitate, not the water that's still in there. And to do that, first thing you do, you're going to obtain this thing called a watch glass from your instructor. And what you're going to do is you're going to go to the scales and you're going to find the mass of this watch glass, and you're going to write it down on your lab paper. After that, you are going to get a scraper from your instructor. It's just going to be a plastic spoon. And what you're going to do is you're going to carefully remove your solute, your filtered precipitate, and you're going to be carefully scraping it on, pretty much scooping it up and putting it onto the watch glass. Okay, now again, it is going to be a little bit wet still, and so we're going to remove it slowly and carefully, and do your best to get as much of the precipitate onto your watch glass as possible. Alright, so once you have removed all of the precipitate from your filter paper, what you're going to do is you're going to throw away your filter paper into the trash can. Then you're going to dump the solvent here into the chemical waste container, and then you're going to wash your funnel and you're going to wash your flask. You're going to clean up your lab station, and then you're going to take your watch glass to your instructor, who should have this hot plate ready to go. And what you're going to do is you're going to very carefully put your watch glass on your hot plate, and you're going to be heating up the watch glass with the precipitate on it. And what you're going to be doing is you're pretty much going to be drying off all of the water. After you dry off all of the water from your precipitate, you are going to take it, you're going to find the mass of the watch glass and the precipitate, and then you're going to subtract the weight of the watch glass that you found before you put the precipitate on it, and then that's going to allow you to find how much of the precipitate that you created.